I'm a rook up. So surely I'm gonna win, right? Right. Well, no. Hi everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be going through a really interesting game that I played recently. It was one that was actually quite crazy. Now, I don't play often because I'm quite busy with uni and other stuff, but this game caught me off guard a lot because there was a lot going on and I managed to gain a very clear win, which I missed because of time trouble, and then it was a draw. But again, I managed to pull it back with some rook endgames. So that I feel like there's so much in this game to unpack and just learn about in general. So I think we should just get right into it because analysing this taught me a lot. So hopefully it might teach you guys something too. Okay, so my opponent started with c4 and I did a bit of prep before the game. So I actually continued with this line. This is not what I usually play, but I thought I'd try something a bit different. So this is kind of the opening that I went with. Just very standard. Nothing major, so this is all still prep. Queen e7, d4, I went e4, knight to 2, d5. This is all still pretty fine. It's just another English opening line. b3, and I castle. So now I'm a bit out of prep at the moment. I still have some ideas, but we're both quite comfortable in this position. It's pretty much equal. It's all fine. So bishop e2 is pretty standard, and there were a couple moves I was considering here. I played a5 here. The reason why is because at some point there were some lines where my knight could jump onto b4, and also it just delays this b4 push from white as well. So that's why I went a5 straight away. Probably was a bit unnecessary, but I thought it was best to get it in there straight away. They went bishop b2, and then I played rook d8. So that just adds some extra support to the d5 pawn, which, as you can see, will probably come in very handy towards the end of the game. They played a3, which kind of hints at potentially preparing b4. And now this is where I go slightly off. I say slightly off, actually fine. So there are two kind of positions that I looked at here before the game, and that was moving my bishop to g4. Moving the bishop to g4 and moving it to f5, and both are pretty valid ideas. I decided to go bishop g4 in the game just because I thought the bishop on f5 was just a little bit stark. I just wanted to be a bit more active. So the idea was after bishop g4, takes, and now it looks like my knight is doing nothing on g4. But with my queen on e7, I am going to start threatening some things. So that's why after h3, I played queen h4. And notice how they can't take my knight because of this pin. And I'm also threatening queen f2 as well. So there's quite a lot going on here. White can't just like castle queenside and forget about it because my knight will then take the pawn on f2. So there's two lines I thought about here. There's actually a couple lines. Okay, so the first one is if they go g3. And now it kind of looks like in a bit of a mess with my queen and knight under attack. But queen h6 still maintains this pin. And there's a few things white can do here. One is take in the center and try and grab this pawn here. And now it looks like white is a pawn up, which is true. But I have this really nice move, rook e8. And this e-file is just way too weak for white. If the knight moves out of the way, then I actually have this knight sack on e3. Because if they take, I will be winning a queen with this check. So they can't do that. The other option they can do is just ignore it and castle. And because the rooks are connected now, they are actually threatening to take my knight, which is why I'm not winning a free piece here, because so I take on e4, they can take on g4, and now it's a bit better for white because my queen's being hit and my king side is now a bit weak. But actually, instead of taking the knight straight away, what I can do is sacrifice on e3 first. That way, if queen takes, we do a queen trade, that's fine. Whilst it's equal in material, I do quite like black's position here. I think the bishop is quite trapped in, my rooks are quite active, and there's quite a few weaknesses that I can target. So that I didn't mind if they went for that castling, this g3 kind of route. I was quite comfortable with that idea. The other idea is if they just castle straight away, and this looks fine. And it is fine. There's nothing crazy about it. There are just some ideas here. I can understand why white might not want that, because I do have some f5 ideas here, which if they do take my knight, then I have these potential rook lifts. So that is definitely a possibility. White has to play quite accurately. So the key move here is g5 to stop my rook from doing that. And the key point is taking on g5 brings my queen away from this h-file, so there's not so much of a sudden attack. And by the time I try and get there, white can burst through the center like this anyway, so it's probably not best to go for that. Instead, the better option would just be for me to retreat my knight and do something a bit slower. But the third option, which is also what I think is quite common in these lines and is why he played it, which was rook f1. And that's just quite simple. It defends the f2 square. Now white is threatening to castle queenside and just kind of get away with whatever I'm doing on the king side. That's absolutely fine. I'm a bit better here and I can kind of feel it in a sense because I just quite liked my position. But that being said, I kind of I made a few mistakes. I kind of messed it up here. So I have to retreat my knight now, right? It's under attack. I have no pin anymore. But h6 or f6 is the question, you know? Where do I go? Because if I go f6, the pros for this, right, is that I'm bringing my knight back to civilization. I'm adding it to the center. I'm supporting these pawns. It's doing a good job. It's doing good. But with h6, what drew me to h6 is this whole idea of f5 and f4, and that is something that that is something that I had also seen in some of these lines. So I was leaning towards knight h6 for this f5, f4 maneuver, and I could drop my knight back to f7. I felt like there was more of a plan there for me. So I did decide to go to h6, which wasn't the best idea. But we'll see where it goes. Another good thing about knight f6 is because after castling, there's this really nice a4 move, right? And the whole point is, you might think, okay, a4 doesn't really do anything because they can just go b4 and close up. Then this is where the knight e7 plan comes in, and this is just very nice because let's say white just moves their king to safety, that's fine. They have this beautiful move, knight e8 now, which I think is just so lovely. This rook a6 lift is actually the main idea behind this. It opens up a lot of possibilities. Now, if white wants to close this down, basically say, don't want any pawn exchanges and just play c5, then this is where rook a6 can come in and actually cause a lot of damage by swinging all the way across. If they go c5 straight away, then we still go knight e8. And if they go b5 to stop this rook a6 idea, then we can actually still go b6 here, which actually seems insane. Why can't white just completely block off the queen side? Now it looks like we're making no progress. But then this knight to d6 gets this beautiful square, and suddenly we're controlling a lot. We're hitting b5, we're keeping an eye on c4. Our rook now can go to the a5 square. There's a lot happening for us. There's a lot of potential to make things go crazy. The other idea is, okay, what if they just move their king to safety? Well, then actually we can make this trade because now we swing our rook across to rook b8. Now you might think, what about this diagonal? And now we can see the real beauty behind knight e8. It's doing such a great job handling this g7 square. And actually white doesn't have a kingside attack. Our king is completely safe and we can get on with opening up this kingside with rook b8. So that's why knight e7 and this knight f6 kind of idea was really good. I missed this idea of going back to e8, but looking into it, that's what I mean. Like, analysis really takes you into explaining why, because knight f6 on the surface seemed very dull to me, but seeing this idea of knight e8 covering such essential squares like g7 and allowing my other pieces to get active makes a lot more sense. So they castle queenside, which is very logical, and I go with my f5. I'm not rushing to play f4 because at the end of the day, it doesn't make much sense for me to open up this side of the board until I'm ready, because seeing as white's especially castled on the queen side, I don't really want to do that. The main reason for f5 right now is to support my e4 pawn, especially because of the pawn tension here. I don't want there to be a case where they can take my d pawn and then take on e4. So f5 is mainly just there to help support my center at the moment. The king goes to b1, which is completely reasonable. And then this is where I kind of make another mistake, but it's tricky, okay? It's a bit tricky. So I played knight f7 here, and this aligns with my plan to get my knight active rather than staying on h6. I thought knight f7 would be quite handy because I have potential of going to d6. I'm covering the e5 square in case the knight manages to get there. I thought that was the best idea. The better idea though is knight e7, so it's basically the same thing. To be fair, knight e7 is quite a nice move because the whole idea behind it is that it supports the center even more. Now if they take, I can take with the knight instead, which is a bit more powerful. It's covering the c7 square, and who doesn't love a central knight? And it's also going to help me prepare for moves like c6. So knight e7 was the main idea here. I just didn't worry about them taking on d5 because I thought my rook in the center would be quite strong. So after knight f7, they did take in the center, but I was quite happy with my rook taking on d5. I thought the rook's not the most active here, but it's not the most inactive. Like, it's just doing a good job. It's nice and centralized. It's guarding these pawns. I didn't mind it being there. I thought it looked quite nice. Now f3 is a really good move that I actually I saw, but I didn't really think about much for my opponent. As you can see by the time, I'm trying to maintain a time advantage here. So my opponent is spending a little bit of time, so I really try to keep my time advantage up. So that's why I'm playing these moves a little bit faster, which might explain some of the inaccuracies a little bit, but trade-offs, right? So I played knight d6 here, because I thought if I took, then I didn't want it to weaken. I thought there's a few things white can obviously take with a lot of pieces here. If they take with the g pawn, you might think I can take on h3, but I didn't actually want to do that because now my king is starting to look a little bit weak. So I have to be a little bit careful about that. I thought if knight takes, though, I do have queen e4 check, which does gain a tempo and just getting my queen to safety, and now I can do what I want. But yeah, I just didn't like the idea of letting my center post go. So I played knight d6 instead, kind of just adding more defenders to the center. And that's when knight c4 comes in, which is a good move, which I think about it. I thought about it. I saw knight c4. And then I played this. I thought this was quite a nice move. And that was rook d8. And the reason behind rook d8 is actually because this is about to get crazy analysis, guys. So come join me and visualize with me for a second because it's about to get busy. So the reason why I went rook d8 is because, and you can see it's a massive time chunk taken away from me. So what knight c4 is actually threatening is knight. It was threatening quite a few things, but with rook d8, I can tell my opponent wants to go knight e5. And with knight e5, if I do something like, I don't know, like king h8 or something, well, there's a few things they can actually do. One, I knew they wanted to take on d6. And if they did take on d6, it's a little bit awkward because if I take with the rook, then d5 comes in and I'm about to get mated and lose a piece. So I can't take with the rook. I have to take with the pawn, but taking with the pawn means that now my rook is misplaced. Queen c4 hits this rook and it's very, very trapped. So it's not looking very good. I can defend it, but it's starting to get very, very passive. So that's why I went rook d8, because rook d8, if the knight does take on d6, I can actually then take with my other rook, and this actually creates quite a nice strong center for me. The other idea is after rook d8, I knew he wanted to go knight e5. Now knight e5 is it's just a very tactical move in a sense that there's a lot going on. There's a lot happening right now. It's not so simple because if I take straight away, pawn takes, then my knight is being hit, but so is my rook. So I actually have to move my knight back to be able to defend my rook. But then things like queen c4 start happening with these pins. And it's just, I can defend the pin and I can hold, but I didn't really like this position. I just think if anyone has a chance to push, it is white here. And that is true. So, to be fair, I say that we got into a very similar position anyway. So I played knight b5 because I thought I can hit the queen here with a tempo and my rooks are now defending each other. So I won't get caught out on any type of those tactics. After queen c4, my rook is pinned, but now I can trade on e5. There's a few things I was considering here. One was taking on f3. And you'll see this is where I spent a lot of time. How much time did I spend? Oof. Yeah, I lost my time advantage. Hey, it's tough out here, people, okay? There's a lot to calculate. I wanted to make e takes f3 work. The reason why is because if white doesn't see it, which, let's be real, we all hope our opponent won't see it, but they will. If they just take randomly, then now I can actually take on e5 because my queen is actually now doing its own pin along the fourth rank. If they take, then I trade queens first, and then I win this rook on d1. So that's what I was going for, but it's not as simple as that because a few lines can happen. One, white can take on c6, and it gets a bit crazy here because if I take on g2, they take my rook, and even though I promote, they take here with check, and unfortunately, I'm gonna get force mated. So it's really sad. That doesn't really work. The other line I was thinking about is even if I take on f3, they could take on c6, and even if I take back before I take here, I just did not like this pawn structure. My c6 pawn is way too weak. They're now threatening moves like e4 with, you know, some extra support, and this pin is going to be a lot of trouble. So I need to actually be a little bit on the lookout. They're also now threatening a4 as well because my knight doesn't have that c7 square anymore to help defend the rook. So I didn't like this position at all, really. So I didn't want to go for that. So I thought my best option here was taken, and it is. I made the right choice, even if it took me forever. The point is, if they take, I now play c6. And this actually is a really nice move because it defends my rook, but it also opens up this socket so my knight can retreat and help defend it again. So I thought this was all good until a4 comes in. I wasn't worried about that because I just retreat my knight. a4 was not the right move because it does prop my knight back to c7, which is something that I wanted to do anyway. The key move here that white should have recognized is actually a very difficult to one to spot, and it's not one that I think you would easily find yourself, and that is g4, which is a very crazy move to play in a position like this. There's a lot of pawn tension going on here already, but the key point of g4 is actually really smart. The idea is to block my queen's access away from this e4 pawn, as well as getting rid of this f5 pawn, because as soon as I get rid of that f5 pawn, white is threatening to take on e4, and that's going to add significant pressure to this pin. And white decides to play rook d4. Now, this is actually a move that I missed. I thought I was losing at this point. The reason why is because I'm actually losing a pawn. What I didn't see is this build up on the e4 pawn. Suddenly they're threatening takes, and then rook takes. And there's actually not a way I can defend against it, which is pretty crazy. So again, I spent quite a lot of time on this next move. Oh yeah, I'm now getting closer to time trouble. But hey, I thought a lot about knight e6, and I really thought I was losing here because this is what white played, which is what I knew they would play. And that is this takes on e4, I take back, and then rook takes. And it looks like white is dominating, right? They just got a pawn up, they got a central rook, a nice open f-file, the queen is active, I'm in a pin. It looks pretty bad. But actually, that was until I found this glorious move. I'm really proud of this move, and I know it's like doesn't really seem as that difficult to find, and it doesn't get me a massive advantage or something, but it was the one move that I found, luckily, in the little time that I had, that made me retain and, or should I say, gain more faith in my position. And I think that's really important in chess when you find that move that helps you gain faith in your position, because if you lose confidence, you're probably going to lose the game. So that was this beautiful move, queen g3. And yeah, it looks simple, right? My queen was under attack and I just moved it out of the way. But queen g3 is such a beautiful square because look at the threats this is posing. I realized here that I'm not losing material. In fact, I have potential to gain material because now I'm hitting the g2 pawn, and this is not easy to defend. If they just go somewhere like rook g1 to defend it, then I have this really nice idea of queen g6, making my own pin on the rook. And because of how trapped this rook is, it's not going to be easy to get out of it. Another idea is even if they go rook g4 to defend this g2 pawn, well then I can whip up the e3 pawn. And actually, it turns out my queen and rooks are now suddenly quite active. So this queen g3 move really introduces some new ideas that I don't think he saw as well. Because he took some time as well, and he played queen e2. Now, queen e2 is a mistake, and it looks a bit weird, right? Because it looks like the queen is defending everything, it's defending all the pawns. What could be the problem? The reason why queen e2 is not the best move here, and in fact a big mistake, is because it lets go of defending this rook, which means queen g6 comes with a punch because we are actually threatening to take the rook in this pin. Beforehand, queen c4 was defending the rook already, so it wasn't an immediate threat, but right now it is an immediate threat because we are going to take this rook and it's in a pin. This looks good for me now. I was very happy in this position. So the time control for this tournament here, which is actually quite relevant to this game, was it was I think an hour and a half in 40 moves. And once you reach 40 moves, you both get half an hour added to your clock. So at this point, we're on move 28 and we both have really low time. We have 12 moves left to make in order to reach the time control. So we are starting to play a little bit faster and have to think a bit more. So there's two things white can do. There's a couple things white can do here. One being queen g4, but then I have this nice knight move, knight g5, which adds pressure to this pin. Now white is just going to drop the exchange. They can go rook f4 to defend it, but then I can easily just whip off this and I've just got a nice advantage. In the game, white decides to play queen c2, which is not a good move again. The reason why is because of this powerful rook d2 move. Now this was the move that got me into starting to creating some mating threats for white. Let's see what happened. They move their queen to c4, so they're still trying to defend this rook. And this is kind of where I messed up a little bit. The reason why is because, look, I've got 6 minutes left. I'm low on time, and there are so many possibilities here. I was thinking about rook sacks. I was thinking about trapping the queen with rook d5, blocking the pin. There is so much to unpack in this position. It's very difficult to do it in no time. So let's take a look at the sack real quick, because I was thinking about it a lot, but I didn't want to lose a winning position, because I obviously knew I was winning here. I just needed to be careful on how I converted it. So let's see if this actually works. If I take on b2, then the king takes. I can take on g2 check, but actually it's not doing anything because the queen is defending these two rooks and there's nothing much for me here. So the sack doesn't work yet. What I was also thinking is if I could pile up on the second rank, which is true, I still retain an advantage. But bishop c1 here is a really nice move for white, which saves the bishop, but also covers these key squares that I ideally want to move my pieces to. So it's a bit tricky. The main move here to find was b5, which is something that I saw, but I didn't want to risk it because it seemed kind of risky, because this is the line that does involve the piece sack. What it does is you can see the queen is looking very trapped here. It has to keep defending the rook because the second it doesn't is where I can snatch up the rook on e4. But the only way to keep defending this rook is if they take on c6. That's the only other square. But if white takes on c6, what this means is that the queen is no longer defending both rooks, and that is where the piece sack works. So I take on b2, king takes, and our queen g2 comes with a much stronger hit. Because once the king moves away, I can actually take on f1 even with check. And if they block with the queen, then I can win the queen with rook d2. And you might think, well, it's 2 rooks for a queen, which is true. And that's also why I didn't go for it, because I didn't have enough time to evaluate this position fully. And I was like, okay, well, there's 2 rooks here and I've got a queen. Is it really going to work? But I can actually forcefully win material here. And that is with this combination of checks to pick up these rooks. And this obviously makes it clearly winning for black. But it's a lot to unpack, right? It's a lot to go through. So I decided not to go for it because I wasn't too sure. I decided in the end to play rook to d5. Now the reason why I liked this move is because it blocks this pin, because remember there is this pin here and I want to use my queen to do some attacking, and if I'm not careful, white will be able to take my knight with check. So I thought moving my rook here does a couple things. One, it stops this pin, so it kind of blocks the queen from doing anything nasty to me. Two, I am actually threatening to trap white's queen with this really nice move, rook c5. And that actually does appear. It's not, doesn't completely work. I wish it did because it looks beautiful. But there's a lot of ideas here. I thought it was just a nice waiting move to slow white down and help me prepare myself a little bit more. So white does the right thing. They move their king out of the way of the pin. And now I play rook c5. So the queen is actually trapped. It can't move anywhere. How crazy is that? But they do have a way to get out of it. And that is with this really nice rook g4 move, which hits my queen at the same time. So if I take them, they'll take me. And because they're both rooks, we're not actually gaining many material. But I found the only winning move here with such low time, like 2 minutes. This move actually makes a lot of sense. And I'm actually really proud that I found it that quickly. And that is queen e8. And this looks like a bit of an odd square for the queen, but there are reasons. Because the queen has to go to e4 now. That's the only free square for the queen. That's why rook g4 was quite good as well. It frees up a nice square for the queen. But with queen e4, the reason why I went queen e8 is it defends the knight. But also, I have ideas of queen e7 in the future, which is going to come really in handy to attack the king with queen a3. That kind of idea. Let's see how that might work. So I decided to go rook c2. Now I'm threatening to take on b2. They play bishop d4, which seems quite, sensible to centralize the bishop. But this is where queen e7 comes in really nicely, because now I'm threatening queen a3, which is going to lead to checkmate. White defends it really well with king b1, so now it's not so forcing, and I need to be careful, right? Because if I just abandon everything and go straight for the attack, I didn't know whether this was winning. I was worried that they were going to sacrifice their queen for 2 rooks, and I was like, is this really better for black? And the engine is saying yes, you're a bit better, but with 1 minute left on the clock and, just looking at it from a human point of view, it's just not so clear. There's no easy checks for me to pick up a rook. The most I've got is queen a2 check, and, the bishop might drop back. But here, I guess looking at it now and analysing it, I can tell that, I can be a bit better here, but it wasn't so obvious. Instead of going queen a3, I took on d4, pawn takes, and then I moved my rook to a2. So now I'm actually still threatening checkmate. I'm threatening rook a1 check, king has to take, then queen a3 comes with a check. That's really important because once the king moves, I can then checkmate on b2, and that's a nice forcing line that will lead to checkmate. But my opponent is also a good player, right? He spotted this and played rook g7 check, which is actually the only move to try and save the game. Anything else would lead to this forcing mate. So rook g7 is the last chance of hope. Now, I have 37s on the clock, and it's move 37, so we have 3 more moves to go. I always thought I would take with the king, but during the second, I realised very quickly that this could actually lead to a potential draw because I saw queen g4 check, king h8, and queen c8 check, and I saw this repetition and I just thought, no, I cannot get a draw right now. I know I had king h6, but I was really worried about rook f6. Now it says that black's winning here, but I have to sack the queen and go for this like really precise rook check, and then rook takes g2. And what this is now is that I'm threatening checkmate and hitting the queen at the same time, and it's just not so clear. I didn't see this entire line throughout the process. I didn't really look that deeply into sacrificing my queen. So to be extra safe, I just decided to take with the queen. I thought, you know what? I know that means I can't checkmate straight away, but I'm a rook up, so surely I'm going to win, right? Right? Well, no, it's not that simple because it gets even crazier. So white plays queen f5, and I thought the best move was g6, queen g6. And now this forces the trade of queens. Now I'm thinking I'm a rook up. This is going to be an easy win, right? Especially with the queens off the board. He has to take, or it doesn't have to take, but yeah, the best move is to take here, which is what he did. And he played this nice e6 move. Now we are on move 40, but I need to make one more move in order to qualify for the time control. So it's my turn to make move 40. And I'm obviously clearly winning right now, but this is where I fucked up. I fucked up really bad. The reason why is because this position itself is quite complicated. Now, see if you can guess the move that I played, which seems quite natural, right? And what the right move would be. So looking at it now, it's a really simple tactic that wins straight away. And it's what I should have done and seen, but I didn't play it. And it's something rook db2, check. Very simple. It forces the king aside. But the whole point now is that I just simplified the game. So I play rook a1 here, check. Now they have to take this rook. There's no choice. So once white takes this rook, I take their rook. And even if they go e7, my rook is there in time to pick up the pawn. And now being a rook up in this endgame is an easy win. There's nothing to worry about here. That's not what I did. I didn't see it that quickly. I should have just played a check to gain some time and get past the time control. But with such little time on the clock, I thought this was also winning. And I rushed and played this rook e2 move. Oh my god. Yeah, it's so sad. And at this moment, we both hit the time control, and I knew instantly that I had messed up really badly. And it's actually now a draw, which is really sad because I had worked so hard. It was such a tactical position, and it just shows how it can be given away so easily. Why is this a draw, despite being a rook up? Well, the key move here is e7. And the problem is my rook is being under attack by the king. So I thought, oh, let me just move my rook across. Now, if they promote, it's fine. I just take it. I'm still a rook up. I also forgot rook f8 is very strong. If they go rook f8 check, then my king has to move, and now this rook is supporting the promotion square. It still actually doesn't work here though, because if they promote now, then I have this checkmate threat, and that was the key thing here. That's why I moved my rook to d2, because I thought even if you're going to promote, that's fine, I've got checkmate. What I missed though, which is really annoying, and it's something that my opponent saw, was this really clever idea of just going king c1. It's really annoying because the problem with this is that this gets rid of that checkmate threat I had at the end. I don't have it anymore. So to show you guys, if I go b6, they go rook f8 check, king here, and if they promote, then I don't have another checkmate threat anymore. I have to take this queen, and I've lost the rook that I had worked so hard to gain. So I had to just suck it up. I realized that, I'm going to lose this rook. And I knew it was a draw, but I just was so annoyed at myself for missing such a simple tactic in time pressure that I played on. And I felt bad for playing on because I knew it was a draw, but I was just like, if there's a chance to win, I'm going to try and find it. So this is why you should know rook endgames, because it came in very handy here. So okay, king g7, they promote, I have to take, and now it's completely equal. I pick up a pawn here, so rook e2, and then I take the g2 pawn. Now we're equal on material, and it's a completely equal rook endgame. They play rook d1. Now I have some choices here. I could go after the h3 pawn, but I didn't want white to gain activity with d5, because if I take rook takes, now some of my pawns are looking quite weak, and I know I win this one, but I didn't think this looked quite comfy for me. I also wanted to make sure I had chances of winning, so I tried to just minimize white's activity and keep some pawns on board. I wanted to try and do that. So I went rook g5, and I actually quite like this move because it stops white from getting active, or should I say it stops white from drawing quite easily by just taking off a bunch of pawns. So now, okay, white logically goes rook d3, which defends their pawn, and I go rook d5, which again, it's a bit weird. I was trying to make c5 work, but it doesn't work because of b4. And, if I take, the king gets active and c5 never really works. So, yeah, I just got my king involved instead. So king f6, I didn't want to take because why should I get white's king active? So white takes, I take back, king e4. Now it gives me a chance to move my rook to a different square. So I chose g5 just to stop any rook g3 threats hitting my g6 pawn while I move my king away from it. They go king c4, king e6, all pretty standard at the moment. They play h4. So now I move my rook to a5. So my rook is moving around quite a lot here, but it is really just to get this king away. So king goes to b4. Now I go all the way to h5. So what this done, I've just moved this king a little bit away from the center, making space for my own king now to enter d5 and hitting this pawn at the same time. So white plays quite a good move. They play rook e4, defending both pieces. And the annoying thing about king d5 now is that rook g4 is quite annoying because they're causing their own threats. And again, it's the whole idea, pawn's going to come off. It's just going to be a bit complicated. So I thought now would be a good time for g5. I think it was best to get rid. This pawn was becoming more of a weakness rather than something I could use. So I played g5. We took those pawns off. Okay, again, it's still a completely drawn endgame. Now you can actually see we're both still in time trouble again. So despite the 40 move rule, we're move 57, we've both used the time a lot. So we're back into playing fast. So, okay, they play a5. Now this is where the mistakes start to happen. So a5 is not a terrible move. It's not the worst mistake. But the reason why I didn't like it for white is because I can now play rook b5 check. And if white wants to keep this pawn, they have to play king a4. Now, the thing I liked about this is that this rook is now limiting the king and making it stick to the a file. Now, if you know about rook endgames as well, is that king activity can be quite important, especially when you have really crucial positions where you have a passed pawn. So this is still draw, but I thought, okay, this is where I can potentially squeeze and try and get an advantage here. So this is what happened. I went rook b1. They're just moving their rook across, right? They want to keep hold of this pawn. So I go king d5 and king c4. So now I'm actually threatening checkmate with rook a1. So they have to move their king down to avoid it. And I played, this is two ways I can go about it. So either way, I'm actually going to win a pawn here. I can go king b5 and after check king a6. But the point is, if they come and defend this pawn, I'm going to go rook d1, hit this pawn. The rook has to defend that pawn, and then I swing it back here, and I can pick this one up. So that's a way I can win the a5 pawn. I chose a slightly different line, which led to me winning the d4 pawn. So that was king c3. Now I'm threatening checkmate again. They go king a2, hitting my rook, and that's where I go rook b5. So now I'm still threatening to win the a5 pawn, but they can defend it with rook rook g3 check, taking the d4 pawn, and now they decided to save their a5 pawn. So that's fine. I'm still a pawn up, but I just won the d4 pawn rather than the a5 pawn. Now, again, this is still a draw, but you need to know your rook endgames for this, and this is why it's so important. I played c5, so I'm going to start running this pawn up the board. They play a6, and we trade those pawns off. Great. So yeah, very standard rook position here. So c4, rook d6 check. King e3, very normal move, just progressing my king slightly. They played rook c6, which again is very standard, attacking my pawn. I go king d3. So notice how I'm kind of using here to get closer, still defending the pawn, but I'm actually now advancing my king closer to the promotion square. But this is where white messed up crucially. That is with this rook d6 check move, which makes it go from drawing to completely losing. You might think, why? Why on earth is this now completely losing for white? And that is because these rook checks are just helping my king progress. Notice how I started on d4, and with rook checks, I went from e3 to d3, and now I can move to c2. And not only does c2 progress my king even further to where I want it to be, I'm now threatening checkmate again. But I also made a mistake. Bear in mind, we do have minutes left each, right? So we aren't able to fully calculate this. So king a3 stops the checkmate. But here I messed up myself. And that's because I rushed too quickly and pushed the c3 pawn, which leads it back to being a draw. And I'll show you why it's a draw in just a second. The key idea I had to do, which I saw, and I played it just a move later, was rook b3 check. And what this does is it gets the king to move away, and then, well, it depends here. Actually, there's a few things I can do. I can go and push the pawn straight away, or the key thing was if the king stays back, I've got this really nice rook b8 move. And what this does is it just gains a move, right? Because I'm still threatening checkmate. The king has to move. But now when I give this check, it forces the king out. And now this is really strong. Because if they go rook c6, I can go king b2. And they're not going to pick up this pawn because I have this check that will win the rook at the end. So why can't I do that with my rook on b5? Well, the reason why is because if I go check now, king b4 hits my rook as well as the pawn, so I don't have time to go c3. That's why it's really important here that I can somehow manage to get my rook further away from the king with a tempo. And that's exactly what this does. King c2 threatens checkmate. I give a check. I threaten mate again. So I kind of repeat moves. The only difference here is that my rook is further away. And now this works really well. So something very similar happened. The only reason, let's see why c3 is a big mistake. Now, the only way to draw this kind of endgame is something called the long side defense, and that is what white has to do. The problem that white made here, and I'm assuming that's because they didn't know this rook endgame, is they kept their rook by the pawn, right? That's what they did. They thought staying behind the pawn was the best thing to do. But actually, what white has to do here is go the absolute other way. They have to go rook g6 and attack from the side. And that's what's really important. Because now when you actually look at it, it's not that easy. I can maybe move my king around, but then I just get checked. And there's no way actually out of it. There's no time for me to push the pawn. The other way is you might think, well, can't I kind of create a bridge and go rook d5? Well, that's true, but then after check, rook d2, white's not going to take. They can just go rook g1. And now, what is my king doing? If I block, then they just give me another check. And if I move my king out of the way, they can just keep checking me like this. Again, there's no way for me to make progress. That's also because this king is doing a really good job in stopping my king from advancing onto the other side. So that's the key defense that my opponent missed, is this long side kind of defense, using the rook on this side to just keep checking my king, which it can't do here on c6. So this was the next move that made it go from a draw to completely losing. And this is where I finally saw that idea. So I played rook b3 check and rook b8. So I saw this idea finally with a little time that we both had. And, you know, it's hard to spot those kind of defenses when you don't have much time. After king a3, rook a8 check. King b4, and now this really beautiful move, king b2. That's not even the most beautiful move to come. The key thing here is, okay, white came up with a clever idea, right? King c4, and if I push, rook b6 check. The really nice move here that I found was king a2, and the really beautiful thing about this is that white cannot defend against this promotion. The rook is too close to go down and defend the promotion. The king is in the way of the c-file and it's so far away it can't defend it either. And there are no checks because my rook is doing a great job covering the a-file as well. So this is actually a really nice way, I thought, to finish off the game, seeing as white can't do anything to stop the promotion. So that was a really intense game. You can see how it kind of went up and down throughout the entirety of it. Went from winning back to drawing, but I really pushed for that win at the end because I knew I could outplay my opponent in some way, so I just tried to do so. And that's why, lesson learned, people, really know your rook endgames. This has definitely taught me to study rook endgames a lot more as well, so that I don't make that kind of mistake again. So I hope you can take away something from this game. Not even necessarily take away something, but just when analyzing this game, realizing how much depth there was to it really reignited that kind of appreciation I have for chess. And maybe it's the same for you guys watching, because I always look at a game and think, wow, that was really nice. Maybe I'm just a nerd. I'm just a nerd, but it was really fun. Thank you all so much for joining. Let me know what other chess things you might want to see, and I will see you all again very soon. Okay, bye.